It's the Craggy Rugby Podcast. I'm Rob Murphy. Connacht have been beaten by Benetton away from home. Alan Deegan, hello.
Hi, Rob.
Not a good night for Connacht Rugby for multiple reasons. I'll give you three. One, they lost the game. Two, Denis Buckley got injured after 30 seconds. And three, Abraham Papali'i got another red card.
No, not a good night, Rob. And one that leaves you with a hell of a lot more questions than answers.
The voice of William Davis, because I feel like I didn't introduce him there when I threw that to him. So, hello folks, and welcome along on our conversation on this game. What we want you to do is let us take you on a quick journey. Before we even speak again, it's going to be like Alan's midweek presentation here. It's like, said hello to the people, let's get into the audio. I definitely think you'll want to hear from Connacht themselves afterwards. Andy Friend and Tom Daly spoke to me after the game. You might even hear a little bit from Lindy McKenzie asking a couple of questions as well. Andy, this roller coaster of a season continues. Yet another kind of disappointing follow-on from a brilliant performance the previous game.
We're like a yo-yo, mate. We're up and then we're down, and we're up and then we're down. So, again, another frustrating performance. I just thought we were our own worst enemy out there today. We couldn't build phases, a lot of error. Got caught up in a game that we didn't come here to play. Thought our forward pack worked really hard, but at the end of the day, mate, we come away from this game heavily beaten by a Treviso side.
The Papali'i red card, it's awful to have to jump on the negative, but that's what everyone's going to take away. I mean, the defeat is one thing. Benetton were fired up. These things happen, but it's going to leave a real sour taste. Your thoughts on it?
Well, there were two real sour things. The first one was Denis Buckley, 32 seconds into his 200th game. Has a pretty significant injury, so I was gutted for him. That didn't start our day well, and then the top and tail at the end of it, you get Abraham going off with a red card. So it is frustrating. Let's wait and see what happens with it.
The breakdown where Denis Buckley got injured, it's just something we discussed in the commentary. It's something we'd be frustrated about, that it seemed quite dangerous how he was pulled in that situation. I don't know. What's your impression on that?
Yeah, again, I just think, one of the things that World Rugby's tried to do is reward the jackler early. Like Denis was on that ball, in my view. He was clearly on the ball. A man comes in from the side, and Denis then cops the injury. So, that was frustrating. I think World Rugby's on the right path with trying to make sure we're protecting jacklers. We have to do that. And in that instance, unfortunately, he copped a bad one.
Just to swing back to Papali'i, did you get a look at it? How do you feel about it at the moment in terms of what the referee decided?
Yeah, I thought it was a shoulder on the head, so you can't do that now. Abe's worked really hard on getting his body height down, and I think on the whole he's been very good with that. But there today, again, made an error, and he'll pay a price for that.
And finally, the game, very similar pattern to the previous game against Benetton. Connacht just struggled to get their game right. A lot of kicking from Benetton. But we were saying we knew this was coming. You knew this was coming. Why do you think you weren't able to impose your game on Benetton?
Yeah, I just thought, and you're dead right, we did know it was coming, Rob. We knew exactly the way they were going to play, but I didn't think we managed their kicks as well as we needed to. I thought we made some simple error, whether it was our return kick or whether it was a knock on or whether in our phase shape when we're trying to play, getting turned over ourselves. I thought our set piece worked really well, shy of our scrum. We had some issues there, but I thought our line out was outstanding. Our line out defence and attack was both outstanding. But we made too many other errors, mate. So disappointing night at the office.
Tom, just quickly, you had the chance after half-time. You took it brilliantly. You must have felt you were in a good position. For it to have gone like that from there must be really disappointing.
Yeah, but I think Friendy said it all there. It's just an overall really disappointing performance. I think Friendy said it as well. Just it's up and down, and it kind of was like that in that game as well. We had some really good patches, and then we kind of just let them into the game with silly errors and breakdown and stuff like that. So, yeah, just overall very disappointing. We probably put ourselves in a good position after halftime, as you said, and we just weren't good enough on the day to finish the job. So, yeah, very disappointing.
Just in contrast to Thomond Park, Tom, is there a fear factor when you're playing an opponent that are favoured, or is there an intensity drop-off, do you feel, that's happening in a game that maybe Connacht are favoured as opposed to being the underdog?
Probably just the consistency is something we need to work on as a whole. I don't know if it's to do with the opponents or not. It's just we seem to have some really, really good performances, and then others were not as good. So it's probably something we're going to work on, obviously next week and leading into next year as well. So it's big work on for us.
You built a good partnership with Sean O'Brien. Did you find tonight that maybe you just didn't have the rhythm with Bundy, or how do you feel it went alongside him?
Nah, it was grand. I've trained with Bundy all week, and he's been training with us the last 6 weeks. It's not like he was on holidays, so he's been in around the place. But yeah, Sean, he was great for the 6 weeks, and Bundy obviously needed the game time as well. So I just said it to Bundy after the game there. I don't think we barely touched the ball in the second half, so I don't think it was anything down to combinations or anything. It's just we didn't really hold on to the ball that well. So that's the disappointing part.
You went out there knowing what Benetton were going to throw at you, but what do you account for the amount of mistakes and individual errors that were made today?
Yeah, Lindy, great question. I don't know, to be honest with you. That was the frustrating thing, because some really uncharacteristic ones from players who've been very consistent, and whether it was a simple knock on or a missed kick, a kick out on touch, a drop ball, or just a poor decision to, poor option taking. So we had the combination of all of those. Listen, I'll put it down to that sport. Sometimes things fall your way and people make the right decisions, and other times they don't. It has been a long old season. But we wanted to be better than that, and we should have been better than that.
I know, obviously, with Denis having to go off, what sort of contribution, or how did that hinder your game?
Well, we knew the set piece was going to be tough, and we picked Denis and Finlay there because we know from a scrummaging point of view, they're very, very good and very powerful in that area. So, to lose him after 32 seconds throws a bit of a curveball at you. So, I think my biggest disappointment there was just for Denis. He's only the third man in Connacht's history to get to 200 games, and to come off after 32 seconds was hugely unjust for him. And I did say to him, I said, you will be able to tell your grandkids, in your 200th game, you didn't make an error, mate. You only had 100% positive involvement. So that's one plus.
When you look at Benetton, there must be some part of you that says, I know you're hurting at the moment, but some part of you that says, well, bloody well done, Benetton, from where you've come from, and to record this four games out of 4 in the Rainbow Cup is something to congratulate them. Yeah,
without a doubt. I said that to their coaches after the game. They're a great club. They had a lot of things didn't go their way during the Pro 12 or Pro 14 that ended up with 12 teams, but they didn't get a win there. But they had a lot of times when they probably could have and should have got a win, but luck didn't fall their way. And today, but they've stayed together and they've fought hard, and they're sitting there now, 4 wins from 4, and got announced during the week that the final's going to be here, so they've got everything to play for.
All right, there is Andy Friend. I'll start with you, Alan. It's an impressive element of Andy Friend's communications that he never shirks a question, never shirks from facing up to a scenario. Didn't say, I want to look at the video from 5 different angles, just said, yeah, that's what it is. Obviously, it's part of how he protects his team and protects his environment as well, because honesty can be a great shield too, but it's always the best way forward, I think, and I think those answers were as fair as you could ask from a coach who's just caught in such a disappointing scenario.
Oh, I think so. I think that's what endears Andy, certainly to me and to a lot of the Connacht fans, that he tells it as it is, and he takes the rough with the smooth, and understands that's what life is, and you can't hide away from things and pretend things didn't happen when they did, and he doesn't, and he gets on with it, and it's something of a, it's a slow build to try and get Connacht to stop bouncing from one end of the spectrum to the other, with the fantastic display against Munster, where they got a few decisions for them, with a not such a good display against Benetton, where decisions went against them.
Yeah. Some of it their own making too, though. A lot of it.
Yeah, but it started going wrong on the 32nd second of the game, when Denis Buckley won a penalty on a jackal and was rolled in a way that World Rugby have been trying to do something about, but that didn't seem to come into the decision ring. He went off and they lost their shape in the scrums. They couldn't compete. Benetton got a foothold in the game from that. So Connacht's performance got scrappier and scrappier. And Treviso, or Benetton, just did enough to get the game done. They got 3 scrum penalties to win the game in the second half. the Papali'i incident came, I was calling for him to get him on. I wanted to see what he could bring. And unfortunately, he brought the one part of his game that either he can't fix or he sometimes just forgets what he's doing. And that's his third red card. One of them was last season, but that's going to lead to a substantial problem for Connacht. I don't think you can appeal that. Andy Friend certainly didn't sound as if he's ready to launch an appeal. But the whole night went wrong almost from the start. The rest of the performance was scrappy. It was inconsistent. This was a typical game against Benetton. It's no different to the game in February, no different to many games over there. But you've got to impose yourself against them. That's how you beat them. Look, let's be blunt. They didn't win a game in the Pro 14 this season. Their record was 16 games. They lost 15 and they'd one game taken off them because of COVID. They then got a win against Agen, who are also a team that hasn't won a game all season, or hadn't at that stage in Europe. They were a bit unlucky in the quarter-final against Montpellier, who went on to win the Challenge Cup. And then they've got a little bit of a head of steam up here in the Rainbow Cup. But they haven't brought anything other than what you'd expect from them. They kick, they get stuck in up front, they make a lot of tackles. Connacht knew what to expect and they just didn't seem ready for it and didn't seem to have an answer. They seemed to get panicked very early on. Bearing in mind, they scored in the second minute with a try and they scored in the 43rd minute with a try. They started both halves completely on the front foot and just drifted away. And the second half, they were completely out of it.
Yeah, for me, forwards win matches. If you listen to your interview with Nigel Carolan, he talked about that just before the game on Friday. You know, forwards win matches, and their tight head prop, who's heading to Saracens next season, Racconi, played the whole game. Went through 4 loose head props on the Connacht side.
Oh, great
and
stash.
was there at the end of the game, still dominating. Like, tight heads are one of the best played players in the team, and that is why. If you have a rock of a player like that, and he hasn't played, he's only played 4. He's played more for Italy this year than he has for Benetton.
Which is a whole other problem, and for a whole other podcast.
For a whole other problem, exactly. But if you talk about Benetton not winning anything in the Pro 14, he's been there for the last 3 games.
Yeah, and I'll say that, William, just to jump on the back of your point, but like it was such a surprise to read through that Benetton team when it was announced, to look at the quality, to look at the fact that 7 of the players started against Scotland in the final 6 Nations. They're all young lads, for sure, but they're talented, they're backing them, they're getting experience in those huge games.
And they're the guys that Conor O'Shea was working on when he left. And now Kieran Crowley is going to have them as the international manager, because he's just been announced as being the Italian international manager. I think Italy it's been a really slow burn, but over the last few years they put faith in their youth, and it's now starting to come true, and you can build teams around guys like that. Ireland do it with Tyke Furlong. Look at what we're like when he's not playing as again when he is playing.
Do you know what? If this had gone a different way, I'll start with you and William, and then I'll bring Alan in. If this had gone a different way, I'd just be happy for Benetton tonight. You know, Connacht got their big win last week. We didn't think they had much chance of getting top spot anyways, and that'd be fine. It'd be just well done. If Buckley hadn't got injured, if Papali'i hadn't got another red card, but also if somebody, like, I mean, you're talking about the loose head prop situation. I've been scratching my head as to why they went McAllister a couple of weeks ago. Obviously he struggled. Why did they go with him again when Matthew Burke is available? Obviously Duggan's been really good. There's been some other decisions as well. Obviously they went with Conor Fitzgerald, and you think maybe they should have went with Jack Carty after his performance. Didn't you see Carty on the pitch and you think, God, they have a problem there. Neither player have form at the moment.
Yeah, that is an issue for them. Conor Fitzgerald seems he's very inexperienced. He's getting a lot more experience.
He looked good against Munster, but he was poor.
Yeah, because I think against Munster they had go forward ball. Once he's put under pressure, his decision making seems to let him down. He over kicks, and I mean he actually kicks too far so the chase can't get on it. He makes the odd mistake. He settled into the game a lot better. But if you were playing a stronger side than Benetton, you would probably be further behind when he settled. I mean,
maybe. But you know what's funny as well is maybe it would be less of a scrappy game, and you could get him more into his game. You know,
that's the quandary of playing. Do you know what they're like, Benetton and Zebre to a certain degree? But Benetton, I think, are better at it. They're like Wimbledon used to be years ago in the Football League. They just have a way of playing. and you go down, you think, right, we know what they're going to do. We've analysed this. We know exactly what they're going to do. You're 15, 20 minutes on the pitch and you're going, what the hell is happening here? What is this? They're trying to beat us up. Then when they should keep the ball in hand, they just hoof it down the pitch and run after it. And you get unsettled. And Connacht, if you look at the first 7 or 8 minutes of both halves, barring the Buckley injury, Connacht looked okay. They were getting in, they'd scored a try. And then slowly but surely, Benetton incrementally seemed to just get on top of you. And Connacht then, when they're knocked out of their pattern, the errors start. The decision-making starts to go, and players get out of position. There was a couple of times today that, there were passes just being thrown and there was nobody there. And you're thinking, can you get somebody moving on to the ball? Well, that player doesn't quite know it. They looked a bit confused, and I think that lack of clear thinking is what has cost them today. And they weren't up for it enough, and they have to look themselves in the eye and say, we weren't really ready for this game. They didn't see what they didn't see what their end game was. Benetton did. They've ground out a win. They have a huge game coming up now against the Ospreys. Connacht play the Ospreys next week, can do them a favour by maybe taking them out. They've got to go to Ospreys and win. I don't think they will, and I think Munster will be in the final, and I think that's just from what I've seen from them tonight. I think Ospreys will actually think, yeah, it's all right, we'll handle all that and we'll have a little bit more skill around the park, and they'll just find a way to beat them.
Yeah, and a lot of those issues that you talked about come from pressure. If you're taking the ball going half a foot backwards instead half a foot forward, it changes everything. And that's basically where the issue was. A couple of times you could see Kieran Marmion turn around, and he couldn't quite see where Fitzgerald was. And there was one classic point when and it was quite pivotal. Bundy had the ball at the back of a rolling maul, and the ref called, use it. And Connacht, the rolling maul went to go forward, and Kieran turns around and he's going, well, who do I give it to now? Because Bundy's in the middle of the ruck, and the other players are going, I don't know. And you could see it. It was near the end of the first half, and it got very out of whack. But that comes from pressure. That comes from the pressure that Benetton were putting on a regular basis. They didn't miss too many tackles. They were hitting really, really hard. Their pack were excellent.
I agree 100%, but the other thing is Connacht just didn't ask them enough questions. We saw that Connacht got a free play right at the end of the first half, got into the 22. Benetton had kind of switched off. They gave away a stupid penalty, and Connacht just made a mess of it. And then a dreadful attempt at a tap penalty because they weren't on it. And that's when you have to seize it. That's when you go, do you know what, we're going to get 7 points now off you, and you're going to go in at half-time scratching your heads going, how the hell are Connacht ahead? They didn't ask the questions at the right time.
Yeah, and look, just to bookend all that, the scrums were pivotal because there were 6 of them, I think, that led to penalties. So even if everything was going well, maybe Duggan's fit and he's backing up at loose head, maybe Burke's in there and proven to be stronger than McAllister, you lose Buckley after 30 seconds. Has a bit of bad luck as well. So skipping the bad luck, control the controllables, and Abraham Papali'i ain't controlling the controllables.
No, I suppose he's not. But he did try to dip a little bit into that tackle. I don't think he was as upright as the referee wanted him to be, or claimed he was. But he did hit him with his shoulder on the chin. But then there were a number of players who were driving with their head in front of their shoulders. That's kind of hard not to hit them. Having said that, you need to be tackling lower.
Exactly.
I think Alan covered it all there. I mean, he started in a certain place, but he came to the key point there.
Simple truth is, they know. They've looked at the videos. They practice it on the field. I don't know how they do it, but that's the way it is, and you can't alter it. There's no mitigation for this that I can see, and I can't see them appealing it, because if you appeal it and you lose the appeal, the ban will go up again. That could be a double-figure ban now, because it's on his record. I know it was one this season, one last season. That's it's 3 within the calendar year is really what it's going to boil down to. It's the same offence. I don't know. Does he just forget? Is it a rugby league thing where you tackle very upright?
Oh, but what he's doing, we wouldn't have looked at that for a second a few years ago. I get why I agree that this has to be done, and agree that you have to have discipline to change people's behaviour. I have an issue with the idea that he's going to get the kind of cumulative red card punishment as if he was stamping a guy's head, because that's what you're talking about. And I have an issue with that, because it's not the same as what Dominic Robinson-McCoy infamously did about 4 years ago and learned a harsh lesson over it. You know, you're not talking about violence, you're talking about dangerous play, but you're talking about something that literally wasn't a penalty 18 months ago. So I don't know if he should be getting something like a 10-game ban. I don't think that fits the whole process. Having said that, I do think he should be getting red cards, and I do think that if he was getting a 1-game ban the last time, which is what it should have been, a 2-game ban, a 4-game ban, but not going up to 10.
No, and also there was a tackle on Peter Sullivan at one point where there was a no-arm tackle of any sort.
And there was no look at it.
And
what happened? And what happened to Buckley? We said it, William, you said in the commentary, I put it down to friend. What happened to Buckley? Same thing. If what happens to Buckley is nothing, and what happens with Papali'i is 10, 12 games on the third time.
There's an issue with Peter Sullivan cited. Ask for a citing. Ask for a citing commissioner to look at it. Teams will not do this. They just omerta. They stop. They cite and say, we want you to look at this, we want you to look at that. Remember, if that happened in the 32nd minute, after 52 minutes, Connacht would have been able to bring a replacement player on. That's nonsense. The captain's challenge is nonsense. Get rid of the two of them. I don't care about the goal line dropout. It doesn't seem to have really happened in any of these games.
I care about it. It's crap, but it's not as pivotal as the nonsense. I mean, what annoys me about the captain's challenge, just pointless tangent here, is captains could challenge before. I mean, it's not like they couldn't. They did all the time. They said, "Referee, have a look at that. Will you have a look at that, please?" And referees tended, if they had a good rapport with the captain, to look at it. Anyways, can I make a separate point? Can I make you CEO for a second? This is a bit of a tangent here. I think William will like this for a second. But look, this is possibly critical of where Connacht are, or certainly just get into the mind of Willie Ruan right now. William, you're CEO. You've just given Abraham Papali'i a new contract. How are you feeling right now?
You're probably glad that it's a playing incident and it's up to the coaching team to work this out. And that's your defensive coordinator and your new forwards coach.
But are you not like thinking to yourself, oh, did we make a mistake? I mean, we know his power. We know his enthusiasm. We know the players love him. You know, and the fans love him. You know, but at the same time, is he not technically, just on paper, I know this is really harsh, but I've got to ask the question, is he not now a liability?
He's going to have to look very, very hard at his own game and fix the issue. And I think he's running out of room. I don't know how you deal with it on a contractual basis, but he's going to miss a big chunk of next season, in my view.
And CEO cap on, you're saying to the management, guys.
You're saying, sort this guy out right now. Now, I'm not doing that, and I don't know how you do it, but they're going to... Let's look at... Connacht have had 4 red cards this season. Abraham Papali'i has had 2 of them. Shane Delahunt had 1 in the same game. For a bad challenge, which he acknowledged at the time. And Jared Butler got a red card for a similar type of situation. But the other players have fixed it. They haven't been, it hasn't been a constant threat for Connacht all season. Other players have found a way to sort this out. So he has got to take responsibility for it and figure out a way. Jared Butler did his best and said, well, he's one of the tallest men on the field. Look, he could be 6'10" or 5'8".
His back was straight, pretty much.
Yeah,
his knees are bent, and he was slightly bent at the hip, so he did make an attempt to bring it down.
But we would have been saying 2 years ago, while we wouldn't have been saying, oh, red card or anything like it, we would have been saying, go lower into the tackle.
Yeah, but another thing he was probably trying to do, which is stop the offload, because there was
which is where the contact. Yeah, this is where all the concussions are happening.
Yeah, and it comes from there. He just has to tackle lower. No question.
Look, it's where was the contact? It doesn't really matter after that. The contact was the head. Okay, look, we have to wrap it up, and I guess we have to finish on that kind of negative. It's disappointing. We'll get a chance to wrap the season next week, though. We'll pick it up again. Look, I said in my recent report, Alan, that Connacht's season is like one of these pink by numbers puzzles where you stop trying to make sense of it until all the numbers join together and you stand back and have a look at it, because I've tried that all season. At times I've said, God, they've lost 4 out of 5 and they don't seem to be, and then they go and beat Munster. And I just couldn't, as I look at my laptop later today and start writing a report, I don't think I could try to contextualise this performance in the season. There's just no point. But at some point, probably starting next week, we will try to contextualise the whole thing. And I'm sure we're going to come out of it going, how could they go from that to this? On so many occasions.
On so many occasions, yeah. I suppose one part of it, and you said it before, Benetton had more to play for.
huge
First
factor,
of all,
isn't it?
they were playing at home, and there was some people there. It wasn't as though the stadium was empty. They did have a small crowd, but there was some element of a crowd there. They're playing at home. They've a massive thing to play for. They are full of Italian internationals. I know Italy aren't seen as a top team, but
They've lost 30 Six Nations games in a row. I was looking at it today.
they have. But
That's pretty bad, isn't it?
but every time they play a team that are in the lower echelons of
they're consistent in the World Cups. They're consistent in winning those games.
Absolutely.
And they're going young, as you said. So back on your point.
Rugby is a game of small percentages. Really small percentages. If you look at the Munster game, we put on a great performance, but you could also say that Munster took their eye off the ball a little bit and weren't because they'd seen Leinster annihilate us the week before and figured they can do something similar, especially in Thomond Park. And they came down a couple of percent. We went up a couple of percent. You get a whole different game. This week, Benetton raised their game up a little bit because they know they have a real chance of getting a home final. It's a home final if they do get it. And we came down a couple of percent. And, it's tiny margins all the time.
I agree 100%. I know Connacht still had a chance of qualifying, but these players are like ourselves. They know that the route to the final for them was Munster losing to Zebre realistically, because they weren't going to beat them in points difference. So while they still tell themselves they want to win, and it is a strong point Alan makes, like one team has a lot more to play for, and we're going to see that next week. I mean, I'm saying it now in this podcast, I will bet a lot of money that the Ospreys are going to beat Connacht next week, no matter who Connacht field, because the Ospreys have something to play for and Connacht don't. I just cannot see a way that doesn't end up with an Ospreys win. Maybe a good performance from Connacht, can't see them winning.
The problem is Connacht are not a top team. If you look at Ulster were 14-2, Leinster were 14-2, and Munster were 14-2 in the 16 Pro 14 games. Connacht were 8-8, so they're off the pace on the consistency of winning. They don't win enough games. If you want to be a top side, you've got to win more than 50% of your games, and that's the problem. And that's, I think, is part of the inconsistency that's there, is that they win some games and they probably think, okay, we've solved the problem, and then they turn up again today against a side who had more to play for. But Benetton are a limited side. That's, I don't see them beating Munster or Leinster or Ulster. If they put a decent side out on the pitch, they would have dealt with what they were asked, what was asked this evening from Benetton. Connacht aren't there yet, but the inconsistency wears you out a bit. Winning covers a lot of problems. If you can win games and get to a 14-2 or even a 12-4 or whatever it is, that's far better than 8-8.
Yeah, brilliant. When you said that, you just reminded me, like, Ulster have some issues at times, and they cover them up by being consistent and winning, and then they're actually going to kick on to another level if they keep that up. Okay, let me finish on this point. TG Car Studios, Mila Maka, to everyone here all season. It's been an amazing 12 months that I don't think the three of us will forget, because we've been covering Connacht, we've been following Connacht, we've been doing this for about a decade, and beyond that we've been following them as a group, and I don't think we've ever experienced anything like this in our coverage, just like the rest of the world. But just driving out to Ballynahown about 12 times now at this stage, maybe 11 times, and then getting this incredible setup, it's been really, really, really helpful, and it has allowed us to bring you, the Connacht supporters, some coverage. And look, you won't be there next week, but what we know from what we're seeing around the country is you're going to be back with us in the Sports Ground soon. So maybe you want to say a final word, guys, Alan?
Yeah, it's been brilliant to be able to cover the game. It's been brilliant to get such high quality screen. Wow, I like that one at home. And of course the RefLink being the third commentator in the game is always huge, and to have all these facilities here for us is fantastic.
Everything we do here is a group and as a team, and the work Alan does in the background on these games and the work that William does in the background on our home games is critical to what we're about. William, any final thoughts?
Yeah, Neil Keaveney is the head of technical here, has been a massive help to us, as have all his engineers. Very unobtrusively, they've just set us up. They were asked to provide something to help us, and they've provided it every time. It's perfect. It's not easy to commentate off television sometimes. I would particularly mention games in Italy where they love their low-angle football camera work.
At one point, there was a crucial scrum, and we were getting a close-up shot of the boots and the socks of the Benetton players. I didn't get to say it in the commentary, but my brain was going, please, just show me some of the rugby.
Yeah, it's funny, and you just have to take what you get. And some of the replays,
nice socks.
And we're not complaining. We're just saying it's part of it.
Our job ultimately, in normal circumstances, which are coming back soon, is at the ground to bring the entire atmosphere and event to the listeners at home. And you know, going forward, that's where we want to be. But second best place in the world to watch a rugby game is here.
Absolutely, there's no question about that. It's been absolutely brilliant. It's been an interesting challenge, and it will be good. Hopefully in August or maybe mid-August, when Connacht might start playing a few warm-up games. They're not going to have long off, you know. As I said, I think somewhere else, when the Lions tour finishes, which is on the 7th of August, Connacht will be nearly ready to start their season. It's not as if this thing is going to drift along. Hopefully we get some fans in there. Connacht need fans in that ground. Yeah. It's something.
Do you remember earlier in the season? Sorry to jump in. You remember the Glasgow game? There was something raw and raucous about the 200 people that were in there, and they made a lot of noise, and that had a big effect. It mightn't be any coincidence that was one of the few good home performances the entire season.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's something they have to get over. Yes. It's a bit of a problem. It's great to say yes, they're the 13th man, but actually you feel now maybe it's a little bit of a crutch for them that they don't switch on. They seem to be better away, except this evening and some of the other games. It's just been an consistently inconsistent season. And hopefully we never have another one that's as restricted or controlled like it.
You said 13th man. Are we going to have 3 sin bins at that stage of the game, or what's going on? All right.
Sorry, I'll rephrase that. The 16th man. Yeah, I'm getting confused between red and yellow cards. What sport am I thinking of that has...
American football, maybe? I think they might go 13th. No, they're 12. They're the 12th man. No, you're right there.
That's all staying in.
That's it from us, folks. We battle our way through the highs and lows, and so do you with us, and we always appreciate it. We'll see you in a week. We'll see you in less than a week, because we've got a midweek show. Do we ever stop? No, don't give us money. No need. Just keep taking it for free.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Side